Herbicide application, you're up for part of it.
So we want to start with this. I'm big on these pesticide laws, and in all my presentations I talk about them. How many of you guys have actually read Regulation 637? Like the whole thing? So I think that's really bad. So there's like 5 people that raise their hands. This is the law that governs all this pesticide application work. So if you're applying chemicals and you haven't read that, it doesn't make any sense, because this just breaks down everything you can and can't do and how to do it and the right way to do it. And it puts it in really easy words that are really easy to understand. So I think everyone should read it. It's only 13 pages, and the first 4 pages are definitions. It talks about treating at schools. It talks about daycare centers and posting requirements and minimum documentation requirements and all that stuff that is what you're going to do every day. So I think everyone should go home and read that tonight. I think all of your staff should read it. Because it's what governs tonight. It's what governs what they can and can't do. The other ones probably aren't as applicable because no one's really using restricted use, no one's bulk storage with chemical, but it's stuff to be aware of. It's stuff you should be familiar with. And if somebody asks you, why can you not do this? Why can you not treat it at school? Why does the school need their what are those things called? Their plans that are posted annually every August for review by the school? Like, you can't treat unless that stuff's done, so you need to know why you can and can't do these things. And if you don't know, you're going to go treat it at school when you're not supposed to, and you don't realize all the rules that are tied to that. So I think everyone should go home and read that. NPDES permits, we're all good on those, right? Does everyone have an NPDES permit? Is there anybody?
Not trying to single anybody out, but is there Sisma that does not have one?
So everyone should be familiar with them. Everyone should have done the reporting last fall and updated their plans this spring. Yes, right? Everyone did that. Darren's obviously great if you guys have questions. And then Jesse wrote our PDMP plan, so all of you guys who stole our PDM plan that she did, she did all the work on that. I just put my name on it, and I got credit for it. I didn't even read it before we submitted it, so she did the whole thing.
You read the law, but not the permit?
PDMP, she said it was good, so I trust her. She knows what she's doing.
The law's good, Drew, just trust me on that.
That's what she gets paid for.
But those of you that don't, if you do plan to, you know, and you do need to delve into this serious, the 80% of the work is already done by those guys. And
By Jesse.
Darren is awesome to work with. If you have questions, he's really approachable. Like, sometimes I know it can be a little intimidating to talk to, you know, the Eagle or, you know, anything, but he's very approachable, really nice guy. He just walks you through it if you have any questions. And as we mentioned, it's pretty much templates are done already for you. So if you do need to delve into it, don't be intimidated by it.
So we should all be good with MPDES and C permits. Everyone has them or is getting them, right? Everyone's aware, so anytime there's water on the ground. I think a big one that a lot of people don't realize is you don't always need these permits. If you're on inland waterways, less than 10 acres, no inlets, outlets, you don't have to have a permit. So a lot of these ponds and individual smaller areas on private property you don't need permits for if they're not connected. But again, just make sure you're using your permits. Doyle's very helpful, and you can get those countywide COCs for pretty much everything we're going to do. So just make sure you're using it, make sure you're getting on MI waters, and if people have questions, Nick does a lot of them, so call Nick. I haven't got a COC permit in like 2 years, so don't ask me.
They're pretty user friendly too. My waters is now very, there's some hiccups at first, it's not bad now.
Right, Claire?
What?
My waters is great.
Now we're not as bad as it used to be.
So service agreements, we all have them, right? Like, we're all doing this work. So there's a lot of different levels of these service agreements, and making sure you understand which ones you need. So county right-of-ways are like the easiest ones to get as long as you talk to your counties. It's free work for them. They're not going to say no. They're going to ask questions. But getting those at the beginning of the year, and that covers a lot of the treatments in those areas. A lot of the work that you're doing on private property that falls in those areas fall under that right-of-way. So even if I go to Nick's house and it's in his ditch in front of his house, I need both, because it's not just Nick. So make sure you're getting your county right-of-ways. DNR parks, how many of you guys apply for those special use permits? So making sure you're filling out those things. They like it a lot more when you come to them with a complete application. If you fill it out and give them maps and give them your justification and have it all good to go when you send it into Alicia, it's a lot easier for them to look at it, review it, and sign it. And they're very good to work with. Alicia makes it pretty easy. And all these other permits. So You're gonna see a lot of these screenshots like the bottom, so this is screenshotted out of 637, out of the law, so it talks about service agreements. Legally, you don't have to have it in writing. Legally, you can have a verbal service agreement. That would be silly, I wouldn't recommend doing it. For MSGP, it has to be in writing, so do that, but you don't technically have to have it in writing.
Just cover your butts. Always have a paper trail, always. If you're offering assistance or if you're causing more work, approach it at an angle that doesn't seem like it's causing them any work, right? Play the game. So just get to know your local contacts. I think we talked at the MISC annual, or the winter meeting. Go into some of these, especially like the road commission meetings. Go to their, spring safety meeting. Get to know the road commission supervisor. Get to know, the unit supervisors for DNR, for your PAPs, or for your special use permits. Establish that relationship if you haven't already, because it just makes it that much easier. And half the time they're, okay, what do you need? And they sometimes will pre-fill out a couple of things for you already, which is nice. So, not always, but.
And then the last one was verifying ownership, so we're gonna talk about it a little bit. So for MSGP, you're supposed to confirm and the tax records and all that stuff. So if you just get right on, most counties are in the 21st century and have ARC online or some kind of something where you can go online and you can pull up the county records and screenshot and tell them that's really the person that lives there or not. And it's a pretty easy process to get that done. So making sure you're verifying ownership. And then how many of you guys are getting permits every year, or how many of you guys are letting them go for multiple years? So who's getting permissions every year if you're treating the same site? Does anyone do 2- and 3-year permissions? Because in theory you're supposed to do it until like the end of the grant or whatever, so you can do a couple years at a time, but staying up on it, because you still have to give them an annual outreach to say, hey, we're still on, so you still have to talk to them. But with our HWA work, a bunch of people have sold these properties, so now when we're going to treat them a year later, now you have to find the new owner because they sold it and they don't say anything to you because they don't care about your permission. So check them back up on them, but.
So,
Hi, Phyllis.
Hey,
interesting
there's
question.
an important meeting out here.
Now it's important to hear
Now
this.
it's all right. Bill's in the house.
So should folks be going for yearly permits just in case they move, or the life of the grant, or like the life of how long it's going to take to treat, like a knotweed 6 years, something like that?
I like yearly because it forces me to talk to them every year anyways. Because if I come to your house and you sign a 5-year permit, I still have to have contact with you every year to confirm that we're still on and provide you the information about how to cancel the contract every year. So either way, I have to talk to you every year. I like every year just to make sure it's still you, it's still your stuff, you're still interested, and we're still on the same page. If you want to go biannually, you can.
Yeah, we do ours by funding. And the reason we like that, we do still have to contact them every year, but it allows us to do it much quicker. We can call all those people in 2 days instead of spending weeks waiting for the stuff to come back in the mail or the email or the whatever. And so we've really appreciated that. We used to do for the life of the knotweed, but we kind of got our fingers wagged at us. So we ended up going by, okay, what's the longest funding we have right now? Okay, 3 years. All right, great, and going for that. And so, yeah, that's
We
how
also treat so many people that we would be sending out so many contracts and,
That's our thing too. It's just the time.
Busy.
The time it takes to track, up here, we have a lot of absentee landowners. So the time it takes to track down absentee landowners and get permissions back every year, we'd spend half of our entire year trying to get permission. I'd rather those guys be out doing actual management stuff. So we do it by funding as well. So like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's how you want to approach it. But just making sure that you are verifying, ownership. Drew mentioned most counties have like an Esri or an ARC-based parcel data search now. Not all. 2 of ours in the EUP don't, so it's very interesting. Still, we're tracking them down with plat books, Google stalking, internet searches, and a lot of phone calls. It's the way it used to be, especially with all of our frag stuff back in the day. It's a pain in the butt. So not every county does have that, but most of them do.
You live in a civilized area. So here's a MDOT permit and the pesticide application plan. That's for DNR. I don't know if it's the same as parts. So service agreements, landowner receipts, I think we're gonna talk about this in a second. So this is a copy of my landowner permission that I use. We 2-for-1 it, and this is our receipt of sale as well, so every time you treat, you have to leave the receipt of sale. In the law, it talks about the requirements for both of them. We put it in the same document, so when you sign permission, you mail it back, we make copies, one goes in our records, one goes in our to-treat pile, and once that's treated, we give it to landowner, and that's how we know that site's addressed. So we used them both, and this is something that, we sent this up to the HWA work, and we had MDARD enforcement, whatever her title was, review this and make sure this was good, and she's the person who's gonna write fines, like if we have an issue. So she reviewed our service agreement landowner receipt and said, yep, everything's in here, you guys are good to go. So if you reach out to these people, they'll take 2 minutes and look it over and make sure you are good. And if anyone wants this, you can have this one.
Yeah, that's a good little side thing, don't be afraid to reach out to your MDARD inspectors. I know it can be intimidating at first, get a relationship with them, that way you know you're covered. We're gonna talk about roadside checks and everything like that. Just once again, establishing that relationship at the local level and not worrying about it until there's a problem is not the thing to do, right? So just taking those proactive steps to make sure you are covered, contacting them to make sure you have all your T's crossed. It's so much easier than just assuming everything's good and you guys are actually in violations.
A good example of that's these posting requirements. So I did what are those things called when they come and look through all your stuff? No, a voluntary business inspection. Voluntary. So one of your inspectors will come out and they'll sit down and go through all your stuff, not to get you in trouble, but to help you fix problems. It's a something check. I did one with ours a couple years ago, and we realized that we had the wrong posting flag. So I was using yellow ones with black writing because that's what Granger sold. So that's where I bought them from. And they're actually the wrong ones because I didn't know they had to be white with green.
Michigan has a specific posting signs.
So that's how
Michigan.
I caught that mistake, and hey, these are the wrong ones, you should order the right ones before the season started.
Yep.
That and some other things that came up just talking through, like, hey, you guys shouldn't do that, you should steer this direction, that caught us from having issues. So, posting requirements, so again, it's laid out in the law. A lot of the work we do, you don't actually have to post. So it's only ornamental and turf that you have to have these white with green signs. If you're not working in ornamental or turf area, you don't have to use them. So they reinterpreted the law last year, and if you're doing a treatment to those areas, that impacts that. So if a mosquito company goes in and sprays someone's grass for mosquitoes, they have to post because that's considered an ornamental treatment because it's over the ornamental area. But all your right-of-way stuff and other treatments, you don't have to actually post these signs for if you don't want to.
Does that mean you shouldn't?
No.
Okay.
So you only need the little green sign if it's ornamental or turf, let's say somebody has knotweed in their backyard, that's different? Question mark?
So what category are you certified in?
It would be core right away.
So then you don't, if you're covered under a right-of-way treatment, you don't have to post it.
Okay.
I think the real question is that actually a right-of-way treatment? Right. To me, it's not.
Right, I wouldn't think it is either, it was so posted, I guess just the coloring I was.
But the question would be, are you certified in the right categories? Because I don't think we should go off just ornamental. I think everyone
No.
should have 3B, Pen 6. I think everyone should have ornamental because 90% of the knotweed work's not right-of-way, it's ornamental. It's in an ornamental area or a forestry setting, not
Okay.
right-of-way, but that's.
So we are treating knotweed in somebody's backyard with ornamentals. We would need to post that.
Yes, but you need to be certified in ornamental too,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
in theory.
Yeah, you better be. So, as we mentioned, there is understanding these requirements, read the law. However, we do, yes, because there's areas you don't legally need to post, we still have our crews post, especially if there's, if it's, there's hiking trails. If it's way out, and even if it's out in the middle of nowhere and they're doing garlic mustard work, wherever the point of access is, just for common courtesy, we want to make sure it's very visible, we're posting. Do we have to? No. But we're doing it for the sake of if there's someone out mushroom picking or something. We need to be able, it's just getting into those good habits for your teams, right? At primary points of entry. The other posting there is, obviously it's not updated now, but your COC posting, if you are doing any sort of frag work on the water or near the water, Great Lake shoreline or blue stripe, things like that. Make sure you are reading the separate, make sure you're reading the separate posting requirements for COCs.
You didn't skip a beat, you got that blush you. Rolling.
That's what it is. Hey, you know, there's things that are in there talking about brilliant color. That's up for interpretation. You have to post in a brilliant color, you know, and all these different check marks and everything. So just because you know, you might be good in ornamental and you're using these green signs, if you're doing frag work, it's a different ballgame as well. We're working under your COC, so keep that in mind.
So data sheets, this is another one. So Mark 6 or Regulation 637 defines what the minimum requirements are for your pesticide records. I think everyone here tracks more than just that. So that's the bare minimum you legally have to have if you get inspected or submitting data to whoever else. That's what you need. This is a copy of Nick's.
We'll back one. So those are, we have cheat sheets and stuff like that, but that's you know, you go down your checklist and you put on there what you need, and this is now on our iPads. Make sure you have all your information down, because if an inspector comes, they're going to go right down that list and make sure that is on for your records. Now, if you're doing an iPad, same thing. You know, make sure there is a column for every single one of those things, so you're meeting the requirements. As Drew mentioned, you're recording more than that most of the time. So this is what our sheets look like. We have, you know, stuff for conversions and things like that for the staff when they're on the field.
Truck kits are something that we have. So this is all of our stuff in one place. So I don't actually have a truck here. So if you go out to my truck right now, but we can drive the truck. So you all know all of our trucks at our office, they all have the same kit in them. So they have a accordion binder book with all of our possession permits, drift management plans that are signed by all your staff members every year, risk benefit forms, labels, MSDS sheets, the endangered species bulletins. How many people are actually doing that? One. Yeah. We'll get into it. How many of you guys use Milestone? Yeah, so you should have those bulletins as well. And then in the back we have a tote with all their normal stuff. So we have first aid kits, the kestrels, so the weather stations.
How many people have kestrels? Or similar,
or Amazon versions.
or Amazon cheapo versions. I mean, ultimately, at the end of it, you're recording different information about the weather. How are you telling what your wind speed is to check for drift management if you don't know what your wind speed is?
If you look at fingers and hold it up.
You don't care, you know, whatever.
And then you pull out your plat book.
That's right. Pull out your plat book.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah, what are they on Amazon? I don't even know.
Well, they're like $20 if you don't buy the kestrels. Right, like good enough. But if you have $200 for a kestrel, they're nice, but they're expensive.
Definitely worth investing just to have in your kit when you're doing any sort of spray that you need to be within your wind guidelines for sure. Worth putting in your truck. Anybody that's doing that type of stuff.
So building these kits and having all the paperwork in one place with the insurance and all the stuff in the trucks when we send crews out, you know everything's there. It's all in the same spot. No matter what vehicle you're in, everything's the same. They're all in the same folder, so you always know you have all the stuff you need when you leave. Possession permits, everyone has them? Yes? Does anyone not have possession permits for transporting revenue restricted species? Yes, no. So they're through MDART. If you need one, Mike Bryan can turn them around pretty quick, so it makes it so you can transport these things for education and other stuff. I think it's good for everyone to have them. If you don't, it kind of documents what you kind of can't do with them, how to dispose of them. I think I have like 5 of these things now, because they just keep giving them to me.
Well, because you just keep finding stuff.
Yeah, we're finding stuff.
I have 3 for each community, and they all say the same thing, but they're different somehow. Yeah, I don't really know. Drift management plan. How many of you guys have drift management plans? How many of you guys have them signed by all your staff members in the last 12 months?
So this is something that
By every staff member.
every staff member, and it's you make them read it and sign it, understand why, and that goes in your file. You make a copy, put it in your truck. It's they're easy. You pull them right up. It's a default Michigan drift management plan. Very easy to do, but it's a necessary part. You do any sort of management, especially MDOT, road commissions, everything. Every once in a while, they're like, well, could you send us a copy of your drift management plan?
You're like, yeah, you know what it says.
Yeah, we print one of those. Yeah,
Exactly.
We're gonna
So,
date it last week though.
That's right.
So if you just Google Michigan Drift Management Plan, it pop up. I'm not doing all the work for you. Just there's a couple boxes you have to check about wind speeds and when you will and won't spray. It's a really good tool for sitting down with your staff and talking to them and like explaining why we do and don't do things. Signed every year. Every person who sprays is supposed to have signed it, and there should be one in every vehicle. So it's a good, easy thing you can do at the beginning of the year. With this, I don't know if we did it this year, but we try to also copy everyone's pesticide cards. So we have a certain individual. Last summer he lost his wallet like 5 or 6 times. So he didn't ever have a license, he never had his debit card, and he didn't have a pesticide card all summer because he lost it so many times. So making a color copy of all of their cards and putting them in the vehicles. Because legally, if you get stopped at a roadside stop, you legally have to have your card on you if you're spraying. So having copies of them is better than nothing. And I talked to our inspector and I said, hey, if you pull this over and I said, hey, I'm done when I forgot my wallet today, but I have a copy of it, and he said 100% I would be good with it. He said maybe not everyone, but if I see that you're trying and like, we all make mistakes, you'll have the wallet at home. But it was really just because we had this kid with a his wallet that I asked for. So copying there are pesticide cards, putting with the drip management plan so it's there if they do need them. And then these are the kind of things that it talks about. Droplet sizes, what are max speeds, what are minimum speeds, because do we spray with 0 mile an hour wind?
Stagnant air.
You shouldn't do stuff. So it goes over those things, and those are the questions, but these are good conversation points to have in the beginning of the year with whatever crews you're hiring to make sure they understand, and they can understand and answer these questions without you feeding them the information. Because if they get pulled over on a roadside stop, they're getting asked these questions, not me. So they need to know the answers. Risk benefit forms, how many of you guys give these to every landowner? Okay, so again, this is required by law. Every landowner you work with needs a risk benefit form. They only need one. So if I treat for you this year, I have to give it to you before spraying the first time, and then I don't have to give you another one. So it's good for forever. Again, MDR takes all the work out of this one. You print one off, you write your name on the top, and you write it through the photocopier. So it must be given before treatment takes place, and it only takes one. So if you gave one last year, you don't have to give one this year, but you have to give one. So it just goes over why chemical, what are your other options, what are risks, all that fun stuff. Labels, MSDS sheets. How many of you guys carry these in your trucks?
Could you go back to that one real quick? Sorry. If I recall, you've got a pretty neat way of going about doing this stuff. Like when you get your permissions, you ask if you can email it to them rather than printing things off?
Yeah, so legally, in order to send receipt of sales or anything through email, you have to have written permission to do so. So in our permission form, by signing, it says by signing, I have permission to email you all documents or whatever. So then this receipt of sales, so especially our HWA stuff, a lot of those people are 3rd and 4th home millionaires that are in Chicago or Arizona or wherever, so we're emailing them the stuff versus leaving with their house.
Very easy to do, especially if you have 100+ people you're going to be working with, and you do your blind CC or something like that, and you've already put that into your permission form. Boom.
So on the permission, we get their email address on the back when they sign. There's a spot for their email. By signing it, they're saying we can email the stuff, and then the risk benefit form and everything else can be emailed to them. The following year, you can email them your new permission if you do them annually. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oops. Computer. I was like, why did we change?
Labels.
Labels. You guys all have labels for all your chemicals, and you guys have all updated your labels now that they sell new chemicals like Vaseline. Has everyone made the switch to Vaseline?
Or are in transition.
Does anyone know what Vaseline is?
Is that the new car?
It's the new Garland 3.
Yeah, no, we don't have that yet.
We're still using Garland 3 too. We're using it up until we're done and then switching it over because when you have the ability to buy it cheaper, you buy a few bottles of it, jugs of it, and we're using it up. So.
Off topic for a second. How many of you guys have ordered through the state contract for chemical? Did you like it? Like
Yeah.
good experience, bad experience?
Great experience.
So if you guys aren't, you guys really should. It's really cheap. If you email him and say, hey, this is what I want, he overnights it the next day. So you get it like 2 days later, it's brought right to you. I haven't had any issues and it's cheap.
So is that actually happening? Because
Yeah.
I got an email about that early in the year.
They said they were going to send out an email for free shipping,
Yeah,
but then they never sent it.
Yeah.
And I ordered and it worked fine and he gave me free shipping.
Okay, can you send out that information? Because
Yeah.
I never got any information about that. Or something.
Hey Ryan, would you mind sending out that email? So it's Jeff Kell. I don't remember his name. Ryan, if Ryan has questions, he can ask me. It's really easy, really simple. You send an email, they ship it to you the next day. They send you an invoice in the mail or by email like a week later, and then I call and pay for it over the phone because it's out of Louisiana and she has a really cool accent. So it's really, really easy, really cheap. I would definitely recommend doing it if you guys haven't switched over yet.
What is the difference about the Vaseline versus Garland 3?
Garland 3A was warning. It was danger, so they reformulated it, so now it's a warning. So it downgraded. It doesn't have that sensitivity to eyes or whatever. And it's a higher concentration, so when people do switch, you have to be careful. So Garland 3A was 44%, and Vaseline's 56 or 57%. So you're going to want to change your mix rates when you do switch.
So how did you find out about that? Were you just, somebody send you a note, hey, you got this great new chemical? Or?
They've been talking about it for a couple of years. So you missed out in Wisconsin, they were talking about making the switch, and it was supposed to happen then, but I didn't see it for sale until this spring. So the Jeff guy, Red River, whatever, they carry both right now, but it's a transition, and then it's only going to be Vaseline soon.
So yeah, keep your labels, MSDS in your vehicles with everything, in addition to where you're storing everything. Very easy to print out and make lots of copies. Just have a folder, have a gallon Ziploc bag, whatever you guys want to do in terms of keeping your documents in your storage units as well, or in your chemical cabinets.
All right, endangered species bulletins. So anyone who's spraying milestone, in the law, the label, it says you have to use these ESA bulletins. This is a website. You go online, you search your area, you tell them what chemical you're going to use, and it tells you what limitations you have for using that chemical based on endangered species areas. So this is either Muskegon or Newaygo or Allegan counties are like covered in KBB habitat. So a lot of these agricultural chemicals that they're using, you can't use at certain times of the year if you're in one of those pink areas, because it's defined as KBB habitat. So this is for April 2018, and it tells you the chemicals you can't use for each method. So GF 2986, I don't even know what that is. You can't use a ground sprayer in any form on that. So none of these chemicals are things we use. These are all agricultural chemicals, but per the label of milestone, you're supposed to have checked this website to make sure you're good to apply for those months. We heard that you're supposed to be checking these daily. Now is the new thing. I'm not. None of milestones never hit this list, and I haven't really seen where, or in writing where it says you have to do them daily, but we heard you have to do it daily. So
if we do it monthly, it's probably right.
originally it was monthly. You could go 6 months out in advance. So at the very beginning of summer, you could print for your whole year and be good.
It's always in
now
this
they're
area
saying,
anyways, nobody else needs to go. Drew has all of it. Stupid butterflies.
I know, but I have to check the website daily to use them. Come on. So if you aren't using them, look at this website. It's a new website now, so the forms look a little different. Print them off, and these are something we keep in our trucks as well. And it's only agriculture chemicals that are coming on the news list.
So you'll actually print off a screenshot of you checking the
No, so
There's a
website?
video.
you can see it, like that's for April 2018. That's why I said, how are they gonna know if I checked it today or yesterday? Like, the thing's still gonna say 2018, so, or whatever month it is. I shouldn't have said this when it was recording, because now they're gonna come back and be like, that's right. Receipt of sales, so, after treatment, within 48 hours, you have to provide a receipt of sale to every landowner that you treat for. Is everyone doing that?
Who has, your receipt of sale ready to go?
Okay, good.
Some people, as Drew mentioned, have it on their permission form. Other people, we have separate just because it's easier to file for us anyways. Just receipt of sale, you need to have delivered to them within 48 hours after you treat it.
Oh, isn't that right?
Nick, can I ask, are all these things required just if you are doing the like the SISMA is doing the treatment, or if a contractor is doing the treatment, but the SISMA is paying them for that? Who is required to do this?
Technically, receipt
were-
of sales have to go to you. If you hire a contractor, you're the customer, they have to provide everything to you.
You're paying.
It's good practice for you to then put it back to the landowner, but technically they have to give it to you because you're the customer. But they have to, like all the stuff we're talking about, they have to have. They have to have receipt of sale, permissions, all this stuff applies to them.
Talking of receipt of sale, so that's separate. This is something that one of our staff, Sam back there, created this wintertime. This is not a requirement by any means. This is just more so like good customer service. We are all working with, you know, tons of private landowners and everything. As I mentioned, not a requirement, but there's so many times when, you know, you go out and you're treating, and say the person's not there. You've already done all your pre-stuff, you went out and treated. You're leaving your customer receipt either in the door. If you have permission, you can email it. But we've created this thing. I brought a bunch of them. If you guys want to take, for if there's any sort of template, you're more than welcome to use. But it's a sorry, we missed you, little door hanger. And it gives a couple things like we completed the requested work. Please see receipt for detail. There's times when they go and treat, and you know, if the knotweed's pretty much decimated that year, you know, maybe be back next year, but say they didn't treat anything, you know, you still want to make sure that you're acknowledging that they went and visited the site. There was no blank found, but if you see any present next year, please notify. You know, lots of different things in the back for any additional comments. It's just a little thing for, because we're not doing 30 or 40 people anymore. You know, it's in the hundreds. And not that we have to have this for every single one, but it's a nice little thing to hang on the door if, you know, it's for notes and everything. So you guys are more than welcome to snag that at the end if anybody wants. You all have spill kits, right? Okay. I don't know how much we need to delve into it.
So per law, how many of you guys have 2 empty buckets with you? So, I was looking at this the other day, I was like, oh, I didn't really remember that one. Oh wait, that's only aerial, never mind. Skip, I just skimmed it. No. You guys are all flying helicopters, right? Everybody's got aerial.
Twice a day.
Fumigation.
So, Jake found the coolest picture ever. So labeling trucks, all your vehicles should be labeled and it has to have your information on it. Everyone's got labeled vehicles, 3-inch lettering, right?
That's something that some people miss or don't realize, the little details, the 3-inch lettering. Literally, there's on the roadside check, there's the measuring tool that they will use to make sure you have 3-inch lettering. Don't skim. It might be easy to just order a cheapo Vistaprint little thing. Yep, I got everything on there. Really look at it and read it, because that has went unseen at different times. So that's important. I just want to highlight that. So what I tell our crew is, same thing, experience it. These new lease vehicles, it's all aluminum, everything flies off half the time. You're dirty. If you have one speck of dirt underneath, they're going to fly off if you go more than 10 miles an hour.
Or worse yet, they'll stay on there and they'll scratch it up, and then you
gotta pay for the damage.
Or they stick to it, they don't come back off.
Yeah.
We had one where we actually just scratch off with a knife, yep.
We tell
The
them
magnet came off.
it's a pain in the butt, but if you're going from site to site, like knotweed in a neighborhood or whatever, just leave it on, that's fine, whatever. But if you're going more than that, and it's a pain in the butt, take them off, put them back on site. At least it saves you the money. I mean, for our magnets, they're what, $40 or whatever?
How many
50
have we
bucks.
lost?
Yeah, I don't want to know how many it was. But something that I spoke with someone about one time, they asked, what about window decals? So I think that might be a thing we could do, you know, collectively thinking about that.
They told us we could do window decals.
Window decals to the specs, and then if you have a lease vehicle or rental, they're easy to scratch off at the end of your lease with a razor blade. So something to consider. How many people are using secondary containment when they're driving? Okay, good. Nobody's just leaving jugs sitting out and sprayers sitting out loose and all that sort of good stuff, right? That's supposed to. Let's see.
Yeah, you're not going to say that.
I know, right? Okay. This is the good one. All right.
So roadside stop forms are, if you get pulled over by MDR for an inspection, this is what they're going to go through. So if you can check every box on this form, then you're going to be good to go. So I think this is a really good self-check form. They make it really easy. They put it online so you can download it and check yourself before you get pulled over. So it goes down all of your information. It talks about your best set cards, your categories you're certified in, your receipt of sales, do you meet all the requirements, all that. So if you have all your ducks in a row before the season starts and you sit down with your crew, you go through this and there's anything where it's like, well, not really, and oh, we don't have that, then it's time to address those issues prior to the summer starting. I think this is also a really good forum where you can use to challenge your employees or your staff. So it talks about mixing, it talks about drip management plan, like do you have one? I don't think it should be a yes or no answer. It should be, do you have one and what does it say and why? So if you're spraying, I should be able to ask you, what is your drip management plan and how are you guys using this to ensure that you're not having off-target drift to neighbors' properties? And if an applicator or seasonal can't explain what that management plan says and why you're not going to have drift issues, then they're probably not going to be very effective with their job. They're not going to follow the rules of the drift management plan if they don't understand it. So it goes through all these things, it talks about your spill kit, do you have everything, do you have the minimum amounts? That's the 3-inch line view, they can turn the form sideways and check your lettering on your truck to make sure it's actually 3 inches. And it has the boxes for, do you have the right information, applicator's information, equipment, condition of equipment. If your equipment's junk, they're going to write you up for that. And then at the bottom of the back page is the cease and assist or whatever that is, part of the form where if they don't like you or don't like what you're doing or you don't have your pesticide cards or you're missing stuff, they're going to sign this saying you are now no longer allowed to do anything until you get these issues fixed and we release you back to being able to work again. So it's a really helpful form if you just sit down and go through it, make sure you meet all the requirements in here. And if not, you can address those issues prior to having problems. So how many of you guys have seen this before? I like that Erin's raising her hand for everything. Yeah, right? She's heard me talk about this like 10 times and she's probably sick of my voice, but she keeps coming back. So I think it's a really helpful tool. And again, it's just Google Michigan roadside stop unguarded form or something like that, and it pops up. Ugh, I don't want to go to the next slide. I'm scared of that one. Any questions on any of this?
What's on the next slide?
Sue?
Did you cover PPEs?
Oh, no.
Just
No.
whatever.
So,
How do we do PPE? It's on
Do you
this
have
form. It is.
PPEs
I
when
think
you're
it's on our-
required? Do you have change of clothes? Like how many people have had pesticide spilled on them? So what do you do and how do you address it and how do you keep your staff safe?
so PPE, minimum requirements, protective footwear, whatever that means, long sleeves, long pants, and gloves is the minimum.
It means not Crocs.
Not Crocs, not
Flip-flops.
knee-high boots, rubber boots.
Okay, not the classic Crocs.
So, Nick over here, and I told Nick I'm going to call him off. If everyone wants to look at Nick's boots, what color are they? So, are those good boots to be spraying? And are those good boots to wear home and to wear around your house and to wear around your family and animals and things like that?
Right.
So, I don't think my crew loves the fact that I make them wear boots. So we buy them all $15 rubber boots. They're not comfortable for some people. They complain about them. One girl said her toenails fall off if she wears them. We have a lot of problems with them. But if you buy them boots and the rubber boots, it's going to protect them. It's going to be better than that. And at the end of the day, they're not taking it home with them. Because Nick's going home with those boots. I'm just going to keep going up here. Nick's going to go home with those boots, and whatever he sprayed that day, he's taking home with them back into his house. Our boots, they come, they show up, they change, put their boots on, they work all day, they put them back in the shed, and it doesn't go home with them.
Are you getting in the truck with those boots on, or are they changing into their shoes
No, they're getting
every
in the
time they
trucks.
get in the truck?
Mess those trucks up. No, they're getting into the trucks with them.
Because that's illegal.
To wear your rubber boots?
In the truck, yes. I was told by Eric McCumber, you will get a citation if you wear those rubber boots. That's why I use boot covers.
This is
Take
the
them
dumbest
off.
thing.
Go
Take,
off.
use
It's
the
sort of off,
rubber
right?
boots that you're spraying in.
You can't take them into the cab of your vehicle.
But you
You
can
can
wear
change your
those boots
clothes,
into your
too.
cab of your vehicle? Right.
Probably also.
No, technically, you're supposed to have a rubber boot in the state of Michigan. That's where the law is stricter than the label and stricter than the federal guidelines.
But I went rounds on that one, and
I mean, it's
they
from
came back
Eric
and said it's not
McCumber,
actually
so
enforceable, that it's recommended, but they can't actually force you to wear rubber boots.
you're gonna fight with them?
I asked, and they said, we technically can't, but that's.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, then you would like. if
So you want me to change my clothes?
Yeah.
It makes me-
I think you should change your shoes before you get in the cab.
It sounded like you have boot covers.
I have boot
Is
covers.
this a viable option? It's like a disposable thing that you throw on your boots?
Well, I've had the disposable ones that are hilarious and very difficult to get on and off. But there are ones that, they're not disposable, you reuse them over and over. you will see them when we go out to do our field portion, so.
They're the big rubber ones that have like buckles, like the oversized.
Yep,
I don't know what they're called, but I don't.
I call them my rubbers. Sorry.
The whole point is to be safe, right? I grew up in the Rachel Carson era. Don't ever be complacent about herbicide. You don't want to transfer them. I've seen people walking around with their backpacks dripping glyphosate. Not a good thing.
So, how thick are disposable gloves? How many mils are those? The average disposable glove is 7 mils. How thick of gloves do you have to wear for Garlon 4 or Garlon 3? 14. Per the label, you have to have minimum 14 mils, millimeters, whatever, gloves. So, paying attention to those labels because there are those extra things. Same thing with mixing aprons and goggles, iPro, depending on the chemical you're using.
Eye protection, I mean, it doesn't really specify a ton of stuff, but it's good to have.
Ag worker protection standards, have you looked at what's included in there and what's required?
Is in that.
That big. There's a cheat sheet though, but there are some additional things in the ag worker protection standards that we're hitting that includes, and this is for folks who, so say you have somebody spraying and you might have somebody going back to monitor, or somebody who's going to be in that area in the that re-entry period. They have to follow also worker protection standards. So it's anybody who's exposed and then anybody who's around the spraying. So if you have somebody who's not a pesticide applicator, but say they're taking notes or somebody observing or a volunteer, anybody else, they would fall under ag worker protection standards. And, you know, that's when you have to have a Tyvek suit in case, you know, you get anything on your clothes. You have to watch a yearly training video, you have to record the training, those type of things.
And they have the extra spot on the label. So if you read the label, there's the ag protection standards box that I skip over when I read the label. So it's got extra, the re-entry times are different. Your precautionary, the different re-entry times, the precautionary statements or warnings or whatever are different. And it's
And
different
then-
PPE.
I think you also have to have worker protection standard posters in your place of business.
So Sue, is that because of Fern's business that you're talking
No,
about? Or
this
that
is-
because
this
of
is-
Forest because it's a production?
This
Because it's a
is
production practice.
anybody, so ag worker protection standards applies to anybody who's exposed to pesticides. If you're a pesticide applicator, you're already covered, but if you're somebody else who is exposed to pesticides, then you're, and MDR can say this much better than I can, but anybody who's exposed during their daily work, ag worker protection standards covers them.
So if you bring somebody out with you, that's not doing herbicide.
Right. So Phyllis is following around, watching this. She falls under ag worker. She should be, you know, basically it's protecting those workers who maybe not have the full pesticide applicator license, because you get all that training through that. So if she doesn't have a pesticide applicator's license, but she's out there or she's monitoring it that afternoon, she falls under ag worker protection standards through actually your place of business. So MNFI is responsible for you through that, just because you're exposed, from what I understand. We've asked the question, what about the public? We're the DNR, we have public places, and they're like, yeah, the law doesn't cover that.
That's why we have the signs that say herbicide applicator here.
So that might be something for everyone to look into because I have not looked into it.
Well, we've had cases where people have been exposed to herbicides that weren't necessarily spraying them that day, so a Tyvek suit is probably just a cheap thing to have in the vehicle, especially if you're 2 hours away from home. Just some change of clothes for somebody to pop into in case there's an exposure.